Well, thank you for joining us. Today's RMS Support Advanced Training. My name is Jen. I'm going to be your presenter today. Just a reminder, all of our trainings are recorded and will be posted onto YouTube within 5 business days after we have given the training itself. Now, what you will notice if you ever need to contact us, our phone number is displayed right here on the tab. As soon as I can get my laser pointing, there we go. Our phone number is right here. You can feel free to call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for federal holidays. We are open 24/7 other than federal holidays. Also, our website is right here. All right. Just a reminder, we are going to cover how RMS actually works and functions. There are sometimes multiple different ways things can be done, depending on your district's policy or other business practices and things like that. You'll have to check with them as to which option you're going to be using in order for you to complete your task, but we will tell you the various different ways that you can do certain things. Again, check with your district or office policies before performing any of the actions to make sure they are allowed for your particular district or office. All right, here's the overview of the topics that we are going to go over. Now, one more reminder, these training slides are available on our website for you to download, and you can review them at your leisure at any point in time, or you can follow along as we're giving this description to you. We have added some links right here. This will directly take you to each of the slides that are recorded for this one. You should be able to do that on the slides that we posted on our website. All right, the main menu items. So basically, this is all of the information that we're going to be talking about once you log into your district. All the way up at the top, there are a bunch of tabs that run across the top. This is what we're going to be talking about today. All right, the first one is the local office. See, these are the tabs across the top that I was talking about after you log into your district. So the first one that we're talking about today is the local office. When you click on the local office, this is what you will see. Now, the office tree itself will not be expanded when you first come into this view. What it will be is just the very top district, which is the top level of your district. So if you're in Omaha, it will say Omaha district. If you're in New York or Baltimore, it will say New York or Baltimore, depending on what it is. If you want to be able to see all of the districts underneath, you will use the little arrow right here to expand it, to open it up, or you can come over here to our expand button here, and that will expand everything, including any sub offices. So these are some of the offices that are listed here, and what you'll notice is there are arrows on these ones. That means there's a sub office inside of that office, so just keep that in mind. Now, once you've selected your office or sub office, there are some modules down here at the bottom that will allow you to set a few things for that particular office, and we're going to talk about the office description here next. All right, so you've selected your office, you've opened up the office description module. This is the information that you are going to come into. Give me 1 second, I do apologize. Okay, I apologize for that. All right, so this is the information that you are going to see when you open up the district. Now, this information, what is put in here is based upon your district or your local office's settings, but it's a good idea to fill out all of this information, because if a user calls us up and asks us, how do we do something, and they're specifically asking for like a district policy, we don't have the answer for that here at the RMS Support Center. However, if you fill out this information right here and you keep it up to date, then we can go in there and let them know, oh, your office manager, you'll want to contact Han Solo in this particular case and let him know, say, hey, contact Han Solo. He should be able to advise you on which method to use in order to complete the task that you're trying to do. So that helps us help other users, and that also helps you guys if anybody calls in and wants to know, hey, how do we do this kind of stuff? You'll enter in all of this information based off of how much or how little is required by your office. You can also set the P2 org codes by clicking on this button right here. Now, this information is pulled from P2 and CEFMS. So when you click on this, any information that is entered into P2 or CEFMS, it'll show up here, and then you can set the P2 organization here. as long as a P2 organization, if you want to add a P2 project, as long as an organization is set to at least one office, it doesn't have to be your office, it could be any office in the district, then you'll be able to add those P2 projects to RMS, but they have to be set, and that needs to be done here. Let's see, anything else that we need to know about this one? I don't think so. Moving on. All right, the next module in there is the Office Policy module. Now, for this one, we give you a couple of different options for how to deal with the QA daily reports. If you want to allow them to only edit the most recently computed QA daily reports, if you're going to allow them to edit QA daily reports within a certain number of days of completion of that QA daily report, or if you're going to allow them to edit any of the QA daily reports, this is where you will go in order to set that up. Now, please note, this affects all of the QA daily reports in your office. So make sure before you change anything that this is something that you do want applied to all of the contracts that are in your office. Next, we have the office documents. So if you're using any generated letters and document packages, this is kind of where you'll go through and you'll look at the office documents, and they will only show up for contracts in your office. And this is where you can add a couple of different things for that. The mod routing slips. For the mod routing slips, these ones are what you can use to pre-fill out this information for your office to minimize the amount of work that your field users have to do in order to create the modification. I believe the field users are the ones who actually put in the modifications. If not, then whoever is putting it in, it will make their job a little bit easier so they don't have to figure out, okay, who's going to be my ACO, who's going to be my CO, and what kind of notes do I need to add for that. You can put that in here and it will populate when they go through and add the modifications. Next, we have the interface schedules. Now, this is just for your reference so that way you know for your office. Now, please note that this interface schedule is the same for the whole district, not just the specific office. So what you will see is you'll see 2 times that are noted in here. Let me go ahead and zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. There we go. So there are 2 times that are going in here. This time is the UTC time, and this time is the time zone for the user who is logged in. So if you log in and your computer is set to Pacific time zone, this time is going to be in Pacific time zone. If you log in, you happen to be on the East Coast, but your computer is still logged in on Central time, it's going to show Central time. So keep that in mind. This is the determination by your computer's settings for the time zone. So just keep that in mind. And this is the information. This is when the CEFMS import is done, and this is when the P2 import is done for that particular district. Next, we have the office user entries. This is again useful for any of the generated letters that you have, because by default, there are going to be some things that you're always going to have to fill out, and you can fill that information out in this section right here. The local office milestones. So there are occasions where you're going to want to add specific milestones to every contract in your office because you know those are the milestones that you're going to want in there. Now, what you can note about this one is that double clicking on any of these ones, you'll allow to see different settings, the record time, the allowed, always add it, always allow the delete, allow not applicable, or the order number in which you want it to show up in the contract itself. And then there's a couple other things that you can also set when you go in here. You can always add, edit, or delete anything. And of course, you've got your sort tiles of what up at the top here, which will allow you to sort them based off of the type of milestone it happens to be, like design or construction or post-construction, depending on what you're doing. And again, you can always use these lovely little filter icons down here to specify various different things. Now, in this section, you will see both local and system milestones in here. Now, please note that the system milestones, you can only look at those. You cannot change those ones and you cannot delete them. You can only look at them. So just be aware, if you see one that says system, it's just for your reference. All right, next we have the local office archive contract. So you have the ability to archive contracts either at the district level or the office level. depending on what your permissions are, will depend on which one you'll end up using. If you only have office admin privileges, then if you need to archive a contract and it's in your office, then this is the module where you will go in order to do that. And this is so that way we don't have office admins going into districts and going into other offices and accidentally archiving a contract that may be very, very similar to the one that they're doing, like it's off by one number. And they're like, oh, that's my contract. Click, archive. We don't want to make those kind of mistakes. So what we make sure we've done, we've limited to some office admins so that they can only go in and do the ones for their particular office. So that way you don't have those, hopefully, minimize those kinds of oopsies. Up at the top, you see there are 3 buttons that go along with all of this. You've got archive a contract, unarchive a contract, and export contract files. Now, please note that when using the export contract files, this is going to be dependent upon a couple of things. First, well, how fast it downloads is dependent upon a couple of things. First, your internet connection. If your internet connection is not the best, I would not recommend using export contract files at that time. Go to a location where you have a better internet connection so that way you don't have to stay connected as long. 2, also, if you don't have a very good internet connection, I would suggest that you go ahead and make sure you disconnect from the VPN so that way it'll go through faster, because you do not need to get into RMS government mode using your VPN. You can actually do it off of the VPN and have no problems getting in there and doing that stuff. The other thing that this is dependent upon is how big is the contract. If the contract you are going into is not showing up, then I apologize. I am getting a little distracted. I apologize. Let's see here. Oh, if the contract has a bunch of contract files inside of it, meaning there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of documents, it's going to take it a really long time to download. There is no notification letting you know, okay, I'm at this point, I'm at this point. There's not a percentage update. It doesn't tell you. All you can do is once you've told it to export, you can go over to the folder that it's showing and you'll see new file, new file, new file, new file. And that's going to be an indication. But what RMS will do is it will give you a pop-up letting you know when it's done. It says, okay, process has been complete. At that point, you can go ahead and disconnect from RMS. Prior to that point, before you get that message, you need to leave RMS up and connected to the network so that way it can go through and finish that process. Because if you disconnect it, you're going to lose all the work that you just downloaded. So just be aware, the bigger the contract you're trying to go into, the more you're going to have to wait in order for it to go through, especially if the internet connection is not very good. So keep that in mind. Okay. All right, so the next thing we've got on here is the P2 projects, which is currently under construction because sometimes you just want to be able to go in and link the P2 projects. But honestly, we've already got it set up so that way everything is done automatically behind the scenes. So this, even once we get this up and running, you won't actually need this to go in there just to view it. So just so you know, it is coming, but right now you don't need it because it's all automated. Button, there's the button. All right, the next tab inside of your district is the district office. And when you're looking in the district office, these are the modules in which we are going to be discussing. And as you see, here's the archive contracts. And you will need district admin privileges in order to come, or at least partial admin privileges, in order to be able to open up this particular submodules and modules. All right, district office. This is basically the same thing as the local office, so it's a good idea to keep this up to date and accurate as much as possible. So that way, if anyone needs to know, okay, who do I go to in order to talk to about my district's policy and go from there, we can come in here and we can take a look at this. That helps us, that helps you, and it's better business practice to go through that one. Next is the position titles. So, if you have a list of positions that you want to add, you can come in here and use the add button and add a new position. Or if you just want to see which positions you already have added, you can come in here and take a look and see what's going on. You can either double click on something to open it up to see what its permissions are, or you can single click on it and then click on the edit button. If you see that you've got duplicates or a position is no longer available, you single click on it and you come up and you choose done, or sorry, delete. Next, we have contract user roles. Now, this is going to be important for setting up staff records. In order to be able to make sure RMS is set up with the correct permissions and all users have the least amount of permissions that they need in order to get their job done, this is where you come to get that stuff set up. So as you can see in this user roles module, there are two tabs that are in here. There's the user roles themselves, which will show you a list of all of the user roles that are for your district. And of course, you can add them, you can edit them, or you can delete old ones depending on how you want to do it. And then there's, of course, the linked staff tab. Now, for the linked staff tab, what you're going to do is you're going to select a user role from the user role tab, and then you're going to run over to the linked staff, and it's going to show you the list of all of the staff members that have been linked to that user role. Please note, it's not a good idea to delete a user role when it's been linked to staff. So if you're looking at possibly deleting a user role, you're going to want to make sure that that you come over here, click on this, and make sure there's no linked staff before deleting it, so that way you're not having any problems. And give me just 1 second, I apologize. I need to silence my phone. Silence. There we go. Okay, now we won't be interrupted by my little phone calling, hello, I need attention. Okay, so when you open up any of the user roles, or if you add a user role, this is the view that you're going to come in. You can always change the title when you come in here. You can assign every single right to no access, and then just go through and find the ones that you want to give singular access to, or you can assign everything to read only and update the ones that you want for other permissions as needed, or you can assign everything as read write. So by default, when you add a new one, everything is already set up as read write. So you would either set it up as read only, no access, or go through and pick and choose what you want for each one. Now, if you want this one to be updated from read only to read write, you just click on the drop down and it'll give you the option, no access, read only access, or read and write. Next, we have our districts policy. Now, this districts policy has 3 tabs that are going over the top. Now, for the most part, this stuff is going to happen at the beginning. You're not really going to want to change this when you've got contracts that are going in the middle. So this is really more for your information. I would not recommend that you make any changes to this, because any changes made here is going to affect every single contract in the district, and it could affect it negatively. It could affect it positively, or it could affect it negatively. It could go either direction, and then a user is going to go into a contract after you made changes here and be like, what happened to all of my stuff? This don't look right. So be aware. This is only usually set up at the beginning of the district before any contracts are really done. But if you have questions about this, you can always give us a call at the RMS support desk, and we will go through and we'll answer that as best we can. All right, the next tab is the mod policy tab. Again, same thing. This is usually set up at the beginning, and you're really not going to make any changes for this one. But this one is talking about when the modification required completion days, you can set that, and some other information that you can set. You check these boxes that needed to be checked, and then what the dates, the number of days after that for it to be taken care of. Same thing for the different types of, modifications. Submittal policy. So this one, you can go ahead and change this one, because though it will kind of affect it, it won't affect it too terribly much, because I think by default, all of these are pretty standard. You'll have a 30-day GA review period, a 14-day FIO review period. And honestly, I've never really seen any of these ones on most of the contracts that I've looked at. Most of the ones that I see are just GA or FIO. But you will want to set the default contractor resubmittal period as well as these. But again, most of this stuff can also be set in the actual contract itself. This is just to set it so that way when you create a new one, those are the defaults that are already going to be set up in that new contract. All right. Prime contractor. Okay, so this is when you first open up the prime contractor, it's going to give you a list of all of the prime contractors that happen to be in your district. Now, you will notice, for some of you who have been with RMS for a while, you will have remembered that we had a DUNS number. Well, that number has now changed to UEI. So now you'll be able to see all of the UEI numbers in a column, as well as the prime contractor ID, their name, their city, their state, as long as this information was filled out. Now, and the cage code. If you want to add a new one, all you have to do is click on the add button. If you want to edit one, I would just double click on it to open it up, or you can single click and then choose the edit button. Or if you want to remove it, you just single click on it and choose delete. Now, word of caution. When you are deleting these, I would suggest you open it up and take a look and see how many contracts are actually linked to that prime contractor before you go and delete that, because guess what? You delete it and the contractor is going to try and go into their contracts and they're not going to have access anymore because you've removed the prime contractor. Whoopsies. So double check your work and make sure you're okay. By double clicking on that, you will come to this screen. All right, let me zoom in on here. There we go. All right, so on this screen, this is the information that you can fill out before you get into any of the contractors. And honestly, some of this home office stuff, you can fill that out for them. It also can be put in the prime contractor module of the actual contract itself. But you'll end up adding the short name, the full name, the UEI number, and the NAICS code, which I have what that means somewhere around in here. Nope. I done forgot what it is. I apologize. I had it memorized at one point in time and then I haven't used it in a while. The cage code also needs to be put in here. And for your reference, here is the old DUNS number. Now, for any of the older prime contractors, that will show up in here because we still need to have that for reference. But if there's a new contract and it's a new prime contractor, you're not going to be able to edit or add anything because that's no longer available. Now, coming down here where your contractor staff and contracts, this is where you can go through and check to see if any of the information is actually showing up. Now, we have updated this to make sure that you can add the contractor staff here instead of going into the individual contract in order to add the users at that point. You will see what the username is, what their account ID is, and whether or not they are an admin. Now, if the answer is admin no, that tells you that the user, the contractor must, as an admin, must go into contractor mode and give this user a user role before the user can access that. So if you ever have somebody asking me like, hey, I set up my contractor and he can't see any of this stuff, oh, that's actually a very simple fix. That person needs to go in and set up the user roles in contractor mode, and then the contract access control grant them those permissions and they'll be able to see it that way. If you don't know how to do that, that's fine. Send them over to the help desk. We will be more than happy to help them and walk them through that process. The other column here, mouse, is the linked column. Now, if anywhere on here it says no, that means the user has not logged in with the email address that is associated here. Now, they may have logged in with another email address, but that's not going to help them and actually get them linked to the contract. It's going to be a different one. It has to be this email address right here, so keep in mind. If the email address was entered incorrectly, like anywhere, like a decimal place was missing or an @ sign was missing, or you gave them a T instead of an L, they're not going to be able to access it. So just make sure that if you guys are doing this, that gets taken care of. Now, when you set up a prime contractor, a new one, the government must enter the very first contractor staff, usually as an admin, so that way that person then is responsible for adding all of the other users after that. Because if you set them up as just non-admin, they're not going to be able to do anything. They're not even going to be able to add user roles or anything like that. So set up the first user with admin privileges and then let them do everything else. You can come in here and take a look, but have them do all of that. That's their responsibility. All right, let's see here. Moving over here for the contracts tab. This is what we got here. When you go on the contracts tab, that's going to show you a list of all of the contracts that are linked to this particular prime contractor. So this is where I meant if you need to delete a prime contractor, come in here, click on this lovely little tab right here that says contracts, and make sure there's nothing in there. If there is something in there, then you'll have to make sure that it's on another prime contractor first, or add it to, if you're creating a new one to replace this one, add it to that new one, and then you can go ahead and delete this once all of them have been moved over to that new prime contractor. But that's something to keep in mind. All right. The FY baseline placement. So if you are going to be working with the schedules used to generate the placement reports, this is where you will enter that information. So you can add a new one, you can edit it, or you can delete it. And as you can see right now in our test contract, we have one for fiscal years 2007 all the way to 10, and then we skip a couple, and we skip a couple more. But depending on how your district is will depend on which ones they've got. You can determine whether or not it's been opened or if it's been closed, if there's a due date set or not, and then how much the projected placement actually happens to be. If you double click on these ones, it will take you to the area where you'll be able to set, okay, I want this contract, this contract, this contract, and this contract, boom, into the FY baseline placements. Next, the dredge names. So in the past, these names were required to be entered into RMS for some of the reports to be run. However, this is now optional. So you could come in here and you can add the dredge names or edit them or delete them however you wish and go through and set up whether or not they're government owned. If you don't have that set up, it's okay because you can still run all of your dredging reports if this stuff is not set up. But it's best practice to go ahead and add that stuff in here just so that way you guys all have a record of it and you can easily find it all in one location. Instead of trying to find each contract, okay, which contract has this one? And which contract has this one? Do I have all of my dredge names? That makes it easier. Just put it in one place, call it good. We have the archive contracts. Okay, so this is exactly the same as the local office archive contracts. The only difference is this one is for district-wide. Now, something that I didn't say with the local office one is this lovely little checkbox up here is select all. If you're going to archive a contract, please don't use the select all because I don't think you really want to select every single one in order to archive them, especially if you've got a lot of contracts that are in progress. So just be careful when using the select all, only select the ones that you want. And when you click on archive contract, this one will bring up a pop-up that will give you a list of all of the contracts that have not yet been archived in your district. And you could go through and use the little check boxes to select the one. Now, please make sure when you're checking more than one, you use these check boxes. Because if you click anywhere over here and you had this one checked and you come down here and click this one, that one's no longer checked. It goes away. So just use your check boxes along this side right here. And when you're ready, you go ahead and choose archive. Now, note when you are archiving a contract, it is a slow process. It's going to take it a while to go through because it's going to have a lot of things that it has to pack up and put away. And then once it's done, it'll give you a warning letting you know, hey, I'm finished. And you should be good to go. It'll remove it from the list of contracts in, It'll remove it from the list of contracts that are in the district when you first log in, and it will place it in this location. Now that's the same process for the local office as well. You archive it, you're gonna, once it's complete, it's going to be removed from the district list and it'll be placed into the office as well as the district office archived. Bing, next button. All right, I've just been told I have two speeds, fast and super fast, so I will try to slow down. I apologize. If at any point y'all think I'm going too fast, there is a lovely little icon that has a turtle. Let me know. Give me a little turtle icon and I will pay attention to that so that way I can slow down. Or if you think I'm going too slow, give me a little rabbit and I will speed up. All right, next one is System Library. We're not going to go, well, I think actually we might be going through almost all of these. We're going to go through most of these and we'll talk about them. But this is all of the modules that are associated with the System Library. So you click on System Library, this is what you will see. And we're going to talk about the RMS Asset Store. Okay. The RMS Asset Store, this is a great resource for sharing your documents or your templates or your reports with other districts. So if you work in 3 different districts and you've created a report in one district that you want to be able to use with your other districts, you will add that here into the asset store, so that way you can log into your other district, and instead of recreating it from scratch, you can simply come in here, double click on it, and there will be a button that will say add asset to district, and then you'll click on that and it will be added to your district. Now, note you have sort tiles that are all up here at the top, and by clicking on each of these sort tiles, it's going to change the title right here, letting you know what kind of information is being displayed in this data grid that's down here. So if you click on document templates, this name will change to document templates, and it will only show you the document templates in this list down here. You of course can export this list of these particular items. If you're doing the report templates, it will only export the report templates, etc. And you can export it as a PDF file or an Excel file if you so choose. You have your search button, my friend. I love this guy. It can search by titles, dates, whatever you want it to search by, or you can use the filter to help you search for a specific range. But honestly, for the most part, I think basically the sort tiles are going to be the most interesting for what you'll need in this particular case. Okay, fund types. All right, so for the fund types, in this particular case, you're not going to be able to edit the names or the type numbers or the program for which it comes from, because these ones came from headquarters. But what you can do is you can decide if those are going to be available in lookup fields inside contracts in the district. Anything that has a checkbox will show up in the lookup field. Anything that doesn't have a checkbox will not show up in the lookup field. If you want to see, let's zoom in so we can read this a little better. There we go. Say you want to see this base closure programs Army FY05 in your list of things and it's not showing up. If you don't have permissions to come in here and take a look at this particular module and you don't see these as available for checking, then you'll need to contact the district admin and ask them to check something and give them a reason why. And then it will show up in the list of options for fund types. Next, program types. Program types is exactly the same as the fund types. It gives you a list of all of the program types that are currently available inside of RMS and the ability to show them in the lookup field or not. Again, if you don't have permissions and you want to see something or you want to remove something, you'll have to contact your district admin to have them come in here and take a look at this. Then we have the contract status codes. This is just for your reference. The only information that's in here is not editable by users except for the RMS Support Center. So if anything in here is not correct, you will need to confirm that with headquarters or the RMS PMO, and they will let us know that, hey, you need to add this for X, Y, Z of a reason. We here at the RMS Support Center cannot make those changes as this information comes from headquarters. Delay codes. So the delay codes are similar as the previous one, the primary delay codes. This is a reference for you to be able to come in here and quickly see what kind of delay codes are offered inside of RMS, as well as the code and the name of it. Again, this comes from headquarters, so no changes can be made without their approval. So if you think something is missing, please contact either the RMS PMO or headquarters and ask them if that can be placed into RMS. Modification reason codes. Same thing. So this will give you a list of the modification reason codes that are currently available inside of RMS. And the same for the FAR reference codes. So these are the FAR reference codes that we have available. And again, this is just for your reference. Of course, you can export this list if you so desire, because this has more information on it than the other two. Agency codes. Again, this is the same thing. Basically, this is just going to give you the list of the agency codes. Now, these ones apply for modifications, and so did the last two from before that. Next, we have our specification sections. So this is where you can view the master specification lists for master format 1995. That's the first tab. 2004, which is the second tab, and 2014, which is the third tab. So if you don't want to actually go into the specification of a specific module, you can come into the system library and specification section and take a look at what's in there and the number formats that are set up for that one for your reference. The PD squared CLIN units. So these are the units that are available inside of RMS for your reference. This gives you a whole list of what we've got. Category codes and units. So for the category codes, what you've got is you've got your Army, you've got your Navy, and you've got your Air Force category codes for the first 3 tabs that are showing up. And then you have the unit of measurements that are associated with each of those sections. So you can come in here and take a look at this for your reference. RMS reports. So this gives you a list of all of the reports that have been provided to you by the RMS Support Center and what area it comes from. If it is a district report, basically that goes in a summary report, or if it's available in the contract, it'll have a C for contract. And then which report menu it's going to be under, schedule, finance, admin, or library, or something else. Then we have the CEFMS batch downloads. So in this section, this one's only going to give you the times in UTC because this is for every single district, and we only provide that for UTC time. And what you can do is you can take a look at this right here. This is the EROC code for each of the districts. Now, if you want to know which one is yours, when you go to the map view and you hover over your district, there's going to be a little pop-up that will show up. That pop-up will show you what the EROC code is, or just log into your district and look at the contract ID. The first 2 are your EROC code. So E100 la 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 or H400 la 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 la. It's the first two numbers that are going to be your EROC code, so that way you can come in here and take a look and figure out, okay, I'm in M3, so my time is 8, it looks like 8 a.m. UTC time. I would have to go up onto Google to figure out what that is for my time zone because I don't know what UTC time is related to me. So Google is your friend in that case. Next, we have our summary reports. So for the summary reports, when you open up the tab, you of course have the sort tiles that run across the top. And again, if any of these sort tiles that you click on, it's going to change the name that shows up right here. And too bad I don't have any coffee. And what you'll get here is the list of all of the reports that are available for the summary reports, so that way you can go in and do whatever you need to do. Now, for most of them, when you double click on them, it's going to bring up another window, which is going to ask you for some specific specifications on what you want to view. Sometimes it'll ask you for a date range. Sometimes it'll ask you for a contract status, whether or not it's a future contract or a current contract, construction not complete, or final payment not complete, things like that. So it's going to ask you for some of those things. Depending on which report you go in will depend on what it actually looks for. And then once you've made those selection, there's usually 2 to 3 buttons. A print, so the first one would be a preview button, then you would have a print button, and then you would have possibly, if you had another one, it could have an export button if you want to export it to an Excel or CVS. But usually if you go into the preview, when it pops up, it's going to give you the option to export it as CVS or XLS or PDF from there as well. So that will work out. Next. RMS GIS. Okay, so for this one, we're constantly making changes to this section right in here. So we're not really going to talk about those, any specific ones, because we are always making changes. But what you can do is you can either choose contracts or offices when you know what you want to know what the GIS is for that, for particular options. And then you can look at the active contracts, the future contracts, or any other statuses based off of this information. It'll show you a list of the contracts that fall under that information, and then may or may not show you a map. It just depends. But again, this is constantly under construction and changes are always being made to that one. So we're not going to go into too much detail. User settings. Okay, when you click on the user settings, you're going to be able to open up this user settings module, which will take you to this view right here. Now, this user settings is available for everybody, regardless of your permissions, because these user settings are user specific. They only apply to the particular user who happens to be logged in at that time. and they can set what size cache they've got. Most of the time, unlimited is good, and you can just leave it at that. And then any settings down here that you want to have set up, or any settings down here, are also available for you. But again, this only applies to the logged in user. So if another user logs in on the same computer, those settings are not going to be the same as the previous user. So if you want those same settings, you will have to come in here and set that up. And of course, you can always put it back to the default if you decide you don't like it and you can't remember what the default is. Ding, click the button. RMS Staff. Okay, so the RMS Staff is a great place if you are a district admin and you need to add users to the district. So when you first come in, what you will see here up at the top is a bunch of sort tiles. By default, it will do the sort tile of all, which is going to show all of the staff. You also have the option of showing only the active staff users or only the inactive staff users. You can also select who has full district admin rights, who has partial district admin rights, and who has district-wide read-only access. Then, of course, you can do it by office. You can take a look at the office administrators, whether or not they have full or partial permissions at that point, and this will scroll for all of the offices that you happen to have if you wish to look at that. Remember, anytime you select any of these sort tiles, it's going to change the name that's showing up in here. When you add a user, you're going to click on this add button. The first thing it's going to ask you for is their RMS ID. The RMS ID should be the same as their UPass ID, including caps. So it should be in all caps, and it should be the same as the UPass ID, especially if they're going to be working with sending payments to CEFMS. It's important, if you want to make sure the user can send payments to CEFMS, that the UPass ID that you enter here is exactly the same as the one that they use to log into CEFMS. If it is different in any way, then when the user tries to click on send payment to CEFMS, they're going to get an error message saying that that user does not exist. We here at the RMS Support Center cannot fix that. So please make sure that when you enter this information, you do enter this in correctly. Of course, you can also see their name and then which office they're associated with, whether or not they're active, when was the last time they were logged in, and if they have been deleted. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this section. I'm going to go ahead and open this up for questions. I'll wait for about 30 seconds, and if I don't hear anything, we'll keep on going. All right, let me check. Okay, we're good. All right, no questions. So we're going to go ahead and move on. The next section, if I can get my buttons to work. There we go. Finances. Finances. So the finances are a particular section. They're pretty picky. So when working in the finances, just beware that, be careful with some of the things that you are doing, because yeah, it could be interesting. So we're going to go ahead. This is the information that we're going to talk about with the Finances tab, and we'll go over that here shortly. Here is some more information about finances that could be useful for you. I'm not going to read this. I'm going to let you read this at your leisure. So go ahead, go to our website, download it from our website, and go to slide 50. And then you'll be able to see this and take a look at this. Aha! Caution! There's a caution here. Do not enter data in this module without proper understanding or training. That is a very good caution to go through. So with that said, moving on. When you open up a contract, then you need to deal with the finances. You're going to go over to the Finances tab, and this is what you're going to see if your contract is active. If your contract is not active, this is what you will see. Future contracts will only have this module right here, future contract. So if what you're seeing is future contract, that means you need to go over to the Schedules tab, and then I believe the milestone schedule shows up like right here. You click on the milestone schedule, and you need to go to the contract award and enter the actual date into there, and then this will change from a future contract to an active contract, and you'll be able to see all of these modules that are showing up right here. Okay, next. All right, so for a future contract, so if you do actually want to go into the future contract module, this is what it will do. And basically, this is just talking about what the possibilities are for that future contract, how much it's possibly going to be, and what the probability is going to be for how likely this is going to be awarded. And maybe it won't be awarded, you'll choose low, or maybe, oh yeah, it's definitely going to be awarded, you're going to choose high. Okay, next. All right, so if you have a live contract, an active contract, when you go into contract finances, this is what you're going to see. Now, the things to point out with the default view is going to default to the CEFMS tab, CEFMS Finances tab, and then you're going to have these sort tiles all the way across the top, for which you can take a look at various different things, and of course the title will change with you. And we have our expand and collapse buttons that are showing up right here, so that way you can expand everything that's showing up in this list, or you can just click on these little arrows to expand it or collapse it from there. Now, the other thing to note with this one, once you've awarded the contract and you're ready to start downloading information from CEFMS, if this contract is going to be through CEFMS, that is, you're going to, first you have to go into the contract description under the administration tab and ensure that the contract number and the delivery order number match exactly what's in CEFMS. If you don't know, then you'll need to have someone check in CEFMS, or if you have permissions to do so, go ahead and check in CEFMS and make sure that information is entered correctly. Once it's been entered correctly and you've entered in the correct district for the CEFMS download under contract setup, under the administration tab, then you can come over here and click on the CEFMS download button. So for the CEFMS download button, if the contract number and the delivery order number are not found in that CEFMS database that you have set up in the contract setup module, it will sit there and it will pop up, download complete, no data for this. It's something like no data. Basically it'll say no things found for this particular contract inside of CEFMS. If you're pretty sure that that's correct, check your system, the contract setup, to make sure it's going to the right CEFMS database, and then check your contract description and make sure that the dashes, the spaces, and all that stuff in the contract number and the delivery order number are correct. And I mean exactly correct. They need to match exactly. If it's lowercase, uppercase, the dashes between the 1 and the 2, not the 2 and the 3, then you'll need to make sure that those are all placed in the correct place. If there are no dashes, you need to get rid of the dashes. Then come back over here and do that CEFMS download again, and poof, it'll say download complete. And then all of this stuff will start populating. Now, when you click on any one of these after you've done your CEFMS download, you'll single click up here, and then you'll see some detailed information showing up down here about that particular item. In this case, it's going to be the funding account. If you expand it out further, you'll be able to see the obligations, the PR&Cs, and things like that. And you can click on each of those and find out some little bits of information here. Now, another thing to note about this one, you've got these tabs that are running across the top over here. This one is special because this one says project funding. Not all contracts are going to have the project funding tab, because the only time the project funding tab is checked or is going to show is when you have your contract set up to track funding at project level. I think probably most of the contracts that I have seen are not set up that way, so they won't have this project funding tab that's showing up right here. They'll only have the CEFMS Finance, the contract funding, the funding balances, and the obligations tab. So if yours doesn't have the project funding, don't panic. It's okay. It just means that yours isn't set up that way. Oh, by the way, there's some information over here that I didn't really hit on too terribly much, so go back and read it at your leisure to see if there's anything else that you want to do. But for the most part, yeah, I did talk about most of that. All right, now the next button is the CEFMS cleanup button. So CFMS cleanup is just going to go through and clean up and remove anything that is not in CFMS for that particular contract number and delivery order number. So proceed with caution, because if somebody has changed the contract number or the delivery order number inside of CFMS and it hasn't been updated inside of RMS, and then they go and click on this lovely little button, what's going to happen is you'll lose progress payments. You'll lose everything that shows up here. All of that stuff will go bye-bye, gone. That's okay though, because all you have to do is go into CFMS and find out what the change to the delivery order number and the contract number were, update it in RMS, come back over here and do a CFMS cleanup, and poof, all of your information is back. Now, the only caveat is the documents that were added into your progress payments are now only going to be in the contract file module. They're no longer going to be in the progress payments. Another caveat is you will have to go into the progress payments and you're going to have to rebalance all of the progress payments, because everything is going to be downloaded from CFMS and it's going to need to be matched to the pay activities inside of RMS. That's time consuming and tedious. So before you do this CFMS cleanup, I strongly recommend check and make sure that the contract number and delivery order number inside of the contract description matches exactly what is in CFMS. Or if you think it's matching but you're not 100% sure, then first do the CFMS download and see what message it gives you. If it says no funding accounts found for this, then don't do a CFMS cleanup. Go to CFMS, find out what it's called, fix it, do a CFMS download until it says, okay, I'm good, and then try doing a CFMS cleanup. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of work if you do this and the numbers have changed. So, word of caution, be careful. Okay, the CEFMS Finances tab. Okay, so this is where we're going to talk about, this is where it talks about a little bit for some of this stuff, and you can see how it's showing up here. Let me zoom in so we can see that a little better. Okay. So as you can see, it starts off with the appropriation number. You'll have all of your funding accounts that will show up, the PRNCs that are listed with that funding account, and any obligation numbers that are listed with that PRNC. And you can click on any one of these at any level to show the information that will be the little information that's showing up down here. And moving over to... Oh, nope, that's on the next slide. Sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Nah, that's better. Contract funding. So let me go ahead and zoom in on this one. Now, with the contract funding, when you come in here, if you've already done a CEFMS download and everything downloaded correctly, then your funding accounts will show up in here automatically. However, if your contract is not going to be linked to CEFMS, you'll use the add in order to add a NC or non-CEFMS funding account with all of the information that you'll set up for that particular contract. Of course, you can delete the non-CEFMS funding accounts. You cannot delete funding accounts that came from CEFMS. So if you're seeing a funding account in here that's not supposed to be in here, then you'll need to fix that in CEFMS. Can't fix that in RMS. It has to be done in CEFMS. Once it's fixed in CEFMS, then you can come in here and do a CEFMS cleanup and it will disappear. Again, remember, CEFMS cleanup, make sure the numbers match. Okay. And again, when you click on any of the funding accounts that are showing up in here, you will have some summary information that will show up down here. And if you have like a lot of funding accounts that are going with this and you want to have that in an Excel file or a PDF file outside of RMS, then you can always use the export button here in order to do that. And honestly, before doing a CEFMS cleanup, I would probably recommend to export both this view and the CEFMS Finances wait, no, that one you can't export, sorry. Just this view, so that way you know what you had before, so that way when it comes back, you can verify, oh yeah, that's correct, good. Okay, when you decide that you need to add or edit a funding account information, this is the view that you will see. This is the funding account edit view, and there are only some things that you will be able to edit in this particular case. You can edit the name, you can edit the S&A rate, and you can edit the contract obligations for payment. Now, this is a little bit different than for contracts that are not set up for project level. This one is for the project level, where you'll have just the obligations on this view, and then the award amounts will be on the project funding tab, which we'll talk about in just a second. But if your contract is not set up to track at project funding, then both the award amount and the obligation amount will be entered in here. And this is where you put that information in. The total amounts for both the obligations for payment as well as what the award amount is in total will go in here. And if you're going to set it up for P2, you can change that information by clicking on Select P2 Project at this point right here. Okay. For the project funding, this is what the project funding is going to look like. And as you can see down here, this is the award contract. Here, let me zoom in here. So we're going to zoom here first. This one will show you if there's a P2 project number, you're going to have this on here too. It's going to show you the award contract information. Now to edit this, you just double click on this guy and edit it right here. But again, if you are not set up to track at project funding, this award contract is going to be on that previous view from the other screen that we had. So just be aware of that. That one. I have to remember that when I zoom in, my laser pointer is gone. I apologize. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on this one, and I promise I will use my mouse. Here we go. So when you go over to the funding balances tab, this is going to show you what the funding balances is by single clicking on the funding account and looking down here at the bottom. You will see the information that you need in order to take a look at it. Now, this section is going to be really, really important for those of you that are trying to troubleshoot issues with not all of the funding information are showing up inside of RMS, but you're pretty sure it's set up correctly in CEFMS. You can verify that it's been set up correctly in CEFMS by coming in here, because there's this section down here that says authorized amount in CEFMS. You'll have an amount. PRNCs not for this contract. Now, if you think you're supposed to have $4 million and you're only seeing $2.5 million, and you come in here and you come to this section and you see PRNCs not for this contract, there's your other 2.5 million. Wait, my math is bad. 1.5 million showing up right here. What that means is you're going to have to go back to CEFMS and make sure you set up those PRNCs for this contract in CEFMS to verify that it's using on this one, because this information is pulled from CEFMS and we cannot change this information. So if this is showing up that it's not for this contract, you must contact CEFMS support to get assistance with fixing that. The other one that you've got is this PRNCs for the total of this contract and available for request in CEFMS. So these ones will tell you what's going on. So if all you see is this number here, but you think you should be seeing this number here, then you need to go into CEFMS to take a look and figure out what's going on with that one. Okay. Bing. Our obligations tab. So with the obligations tab, when you come over here, you can of course expand and collapse everything that's showing up. And then again, this will show you the contract number, all of the funding accounts associated with it, and all of the obligations that are associated with that particular funding account. And then when you single click on them, you'll get more information about that particular item down here at the bottom. One thing to note, that there's this right here, current contract, which will show you what the current contract amount is in RMS, as well as what's obligated in CEFMS and any additional obligations required. So if there's a difference between these two, that will show up right in here, and you'll probably need to take a look at CEFMS to see, okay, my RMS is saying it's this much, CEFMS is saying it's this much. You'll either need to update RMS or you'll need to update CEFMS, depending on which one is not correct. And you'll have to go work with CEFMS to find out which one is which. All right, after you've got all of that set up, then you can come over to the award cleanse and start adding award cleanse to your contracts. So the first thing that you're going to do when coming over here is you're going to add your award cleanse, or if you've already started and you've got some of it, you can edit them, or if you accidentally added one that's not correct, you can delete it. Now with the award cleanse, For the most part, you're only going to set up the award cleanse once and once only. And then after that, you're not messing with it because RMS Finances are building blocks. So it's set up, the award cleanse are all the way down at the bottom, and then you have a modification on top of a modification on top of a modification. If you think that your award cleanse was not correct, but you already have modifications linked to that, yeah, no. Please, please do not try to fix that. Make sure you fix it before you make any payments on the award cleanse, because if you wait until halfway through and you realize that the award cleanse is not right and you try to fix that, if you don't have a very, very good understanding of what's going on, you could seriously cause a lot of issues and a lot of work on your contract if you try to go back and correct the award cleanse. So if it's already been paid on, if a modification has already been done to it, done. It's finished. So when you set up the contract, make sure you double check and verify that this information that you set up is correct before you start making payments. Because once you start making payments, trying to go back and fix it can cause a lot of work, and we want to prevent that kind of stuff. So double check your work up front to save yourself a lot of work in the long run. All right, here's a little bit of information about price parent cleanse and information parent cleanse. One thing that I should tell you about cleanse inside of RMS. The RMS cleanse are not the same things as the CEFMS cleanse. CEFMS does not see RMS cleanse, and RMS does not see CEFMS cleanse. What RMS sees are the obligations. So when you set up the award cleanse or contract modification, what you're doing is you're taking the RMS cleanse and you're linking it to the correct CEFMS obligation line item. So keep that in mind. Doesn't matter what you name or label the award cleanse or the modification cleanse inside of RMS, though I would highly recommend that you actually use the same structure as what's in CEFMS, because that will prevent any confusion from the field users who are not familiar with all of that stuff, to make sure that they're putting things in the right location, the right dollar amounts on the right cleanse, and things like that. But again, so this is some more information that you can go ahead and read at your leisure. I'm going to move on to when you click on add new award cleanse, this is what's going to come up. It's going to ask you, do you want a price parent cleanse or do you want a sub cleanse? Now, the biggest difference between the parent cleanse and the sub cleanse is with a parent cleanse, you have the ability to link it to more than one funding account. With a sub cleanse, you do not. You can only link it to one and one only. So if you know for a fact that it's never going to be linked to anything else, you can use a sub cleanse. But if you know that it's probably going to be linked to a couple of different ones, then I would use price parent cleanse. And this is for your information. You can go through and read that, and it's talking about the various differences. Now, one thing I will point out, if it's a price parent cleanse, it's just going to be defaulting to a number. If it's a sub cleanse, it's going to default to a number with 2 letters on the back end of it, so that way it's easy to figure out. Now, I would leave this particular setup. Now, you can change the numbers from 001 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever setup you want, but I would leave the designation with the double numbers, just because if you call us and ask us for assistance, it'll make it easier for us to try and figure out what's going on if you leave it that way. However, it's up to your district's policy, so check with your district's policy on the naming scheme. Once you've chosen which of these that you are going to be choosing, then you click on the next button that shows up here. And it's going to ask you to enter in some of the details for that. So you'll have your description. Here, let's zoom in on that so it's easier to look at. Oh, my mouse is down there, that's why. Zoom! Bing! Okay. So you're going to be able to enter the description of the award cleanse. I would probably just try and match this with the CEFMS information. The unit of measurement. Now, with the unit of measurement, it doesn't matter what you choose here. It's what it is in CEFMS when sending it to CEFMS. So you can choose whatever you want for the unit of measurement here, because this is not seen by CEFMS and CEFMS doesn't care about it. This is just for your reference to make it easier. You probably want to choose kind of what's in CEFMS, but again, it doesn't matter. You can pick whatever you want. Now, you'll be able to set this information when this checkbox is not checked. So before checking this checkbox, you won't see anything down here. but you will be able to edit this information that shows up in here. Now, depending on whether or not you're using something that's a quantity or a full amount, will depend on which of these boxes you'll be able to edit. So if you're doing like something that's full amount, meaning it's only going to be an award quantity of 1, you'll be able to edit the unit price. However, if you're doing something that's a quantity, what you'll be able to edit is the quantity as well as the unit price, and then it'll calculate the award amount. So let me back up. For those quantities of 1, it's the award amount that you can enter. Apologize. Once that information is done, you're going to click this little checkbox right here for CLIN pricing complete, ready to fund. Now, even if you're entering a $0 award because it's an option and you want to put that in there, you still need to check this box, even if you're not going to add any funding information to it. And that is because if you want to be able to modify it later down the road, if this box is not checked, you're going to have to come back in and check the box before you go through the process of doing the contract modification. Once you've checked this box and you need to do the funding, you come over to the funding button and you click on this funding button, and it is going to show you, did we put that on there? Hold on, let me zoom out for a second. No, we didn't put on that screen. So it's going to give you the list of all of the funding accounts that are associated with that particular contract. And then what you'll do is you'll add the dollar amounts to each of the line items. So it's going to give you the list of the funding account, the PRNC, the obligation description, and the line item number, and you decide how much money for this particular CLIN is going to go on that one. Now, if it's being funded on more than one, then you'll put it on however many it happens to be. Just make sure you're choosing the right funding account, PRNC, and obligation line item, so that way you don't have any issues later on down the road. Once you have finished with that one, then what will happen is you'll come down here and it will tell you what the total amount for the CLIN is, what the obligation amount for the CLIN is, and if there are any variances. If there's a variance, it's not going to let you complete it, so you need to make sure you put the full amount, either reduce this amount or increase or whatever it happens to be. Now, in order to change this, you do have to uncheck this box to fix that one, then check it, then go back into the funding, and then you'll be able to take care of that and make sure no variances show up. Okay. Oh, hey, I did bring that stuff up. Cool. All right, so when you click on the funding button, this is what you're going to see basically when you come through this one, or if it's a sub-CLIN, this is what you're going to see. Price parent CLINs look like this, and it will show you the list of all of the funding accounts that you can choose from, and then you'll be able to put the amount on the obligation in this area right here, and you'll choose next, and then it'll give you a summary of it, and you'll choose finish. Now, if there is a variance down here, it's not going to let you choose this next button. So you need to make sure there is no variance. So if this amount does not match this obligation, then you're not going to be able to continue. And this obligation was on the previous screen. Let me back up here. This one right here. So that was what is showing up in here. Oh, sorry. That's the amount one. You're doing the obligation on the screen. All right, the next module inside the contract finances is the current CLINs. Now, for the current CLINs, this is going to show you a list of all of the CLINs that are already in the contract. So any CLINs added by modifications, any award CLINs, they'll show up in here. When you single click on the CLINs, down here at the bottom, it's going to show you the history. If it was an award CLIN, it will show you an award CLIN. If it had any modifications, it will tell you all of the modifications that were associated with that CLIN. Or if it was only for a modification, it will tell you that kind of information as well. And of course, it'll tell you the quantity and the current amount. None of this information is editable here. This is just for your reference for a quick view of what it looks like. And this will tell you what the current contract happens to be set up as, just for quick reference as well. Pay activities. I'm going to let you read this for just a second while I take a couple sips of water, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, so the only thing that I'm going to read out over here for you guys to really take a look at is this little information right here. One CLIN may have multiple activity IDs attached to it. The sum of the activities must balance with that CLIN. So it's possible that you can have one activity per CLIN, and that activity is the total amount of that CLIN. Or you can set it up so that way you've got anywhere from 5 to 100 activities assigned to one CLIN. But the dollar amount for all of the activities that are assigned to that CLIN must sum up to the total of the amount of money that that particular CLIN actually has to it. So just keep that in mind. All right. Now, here we're talking about the pay activities. For the most part, this information is the responsibility of the contract to enter in the pay activities, to balance the pay activities, and to make sure all of this stuff is taken care of. However, we are going to go over this so that way you understand how it is that they're going to do it. So if you get a newbie contractor, you can sit there and tell them, well, in order to do that, you need to do this, 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 and this. So this way you'll know where this stuff is. And when your contractor comes in and says, hey, I'm having a problem with this, you're not scratching your head like, huh? So when you open up a pay activity, so if you go into the pay activities module and you double click on one of the pay, well, actually, no, this is where you're going to see. You're going to see the list of activities, or you can take and look at the list of CLINs, or you can look at the contractors, or you can look at the features tab. Now, these three tabs right here are going to show you all of the CLINs that are associated with that, all of the contractors and subcontractors that are associated with the contract, and all of the features that are associated with that contract. And it'll show it up in a list kind of like this one here showing the activities. And you'll see that here in just a minute. All of them are going to have 1, 2, or more sort tiles going off at the top. In this case, this one only has 2, all of the activities versus all of the activities with no CLIN or an invalid CLIN. Now, this is important. Now, you will see some that have invalid CLINs, and that usually has to do with the fact that an file was imported with a CLIN that does not match what is currently inside of RMS. If the contractor imported that CLIN with outmatching that what's inside of RMS, they'll end up getting invalid CLINs, and they're going to have to fix that. 9 times out of 10, I would recommend that they fix that in their scheduling software and re-import. But for a short, quick fix, they can always just do it one by one in here by hand. But honestly, it'll be faster if they do it in their scheduling software. Now, on the Activities tab, you'll see the activity ID, the description, the CLIN, and the amount that's associated with that activity. And if you single click on that activity, you'll see some summary details that are showing up down here at the bottom for that particular activity. Excuse me. All right, on to the CLINs tab. So when you click on the CLINs, you'll see the list of all of the CLINs that happen to be in this particular contract, the number of activities that are associated with that CLIN, the name of the CLIN, as well as the total amount for that CLIN and the sum of all of the activities linked to that CLIN and whether or not it is balanced. If you have one that is unbalanced, it will show up in text red and say unbalanced. And if you want to find out what's going on, you can just double click on that CLIN and it's going to bring you to the list of all of the activities that are associated with that CLIN. So that way you can take a look at all of that information. Of course, you also have these sort tiles up at the top to see all of the CLINs, balanced CLINs, and then any that are unbalanced by clicking on that information. Next, we have the Contractors tab. Again, this is a list of all of the subcontractors that happen to be set up for this particular contract, and you'll be able to see what they are based off of their responsibility code, as well as their full name. Now, any of the ones that show up in red over here are going to be ones that have not been linked to an activity, which you'll be notified by this over here because this tells you how many activities are associated with each of those particular subcontractors. Now, if you see any in here that have the same name, one's red and one's not, that probably means that somebody has put in duplicate subcontractors, usually through an SDEF import, and they'll have to go back and fix that. But this is also got the sort tiles across the top. All of them, only ones linked to pay activities, only ones not linked to pay activities, just for your reference. And if a trade is set for that subcontractor, you'll be able to see that here and how much they've been subcontracted out for. Last, we've got the Features tab. This is the same thing. You'll have the title of the feature. If it's in red, that means it has not been linked to an activity. Now, here's the thing. Features, only one feature can be linked to an activity. However, you can have multiple activities linked to a single feature. So you will be able to see the activity count showing up in this left column over here. And then if it's not been linked to any activities, it will show up in red, and then the feature ID will show up over here. Excuse me. Okay. This is the activity edit view. So if on the activity slide, the activity tab, you double click on the activity, this is going to be what you will see in the edit view. Now again, this should be set up by the contractor. This really should not be set up by the government, but this is for your reference so that way you know what's going on. Now there are 4 tabs across this top because this particular contract was set up for dredging. Now, most contracts are not necessarily going to have that. If your contract is not set up for dredging, you will not have these 3 tabs that are running across the top. For the general tab, everybody is going to have this information. Now, here is where you're going to be able to set the description, and we'll talk about some of this stuff in a little later section. But this is where, if it's been linked to a CLIN, this is where you'll be able to see the CLIN price as well as the quantity. And if it's a quantity CLIN, you'll be able to see this message down here. Now, if it's not a quantity CLIN, you're just going to see the price. That's it. And then the activity amount is how much money is associated with this one. At the bottom of that, you'll have a summary of what the sum for that CLIN is, as well as the activity amount totals for that as well. All right, so this is the view if you do not have a quantity CLIN linked to it. This is just like a lump sum or an each. This is what you will see. So the quantity will not be able to be edited or changed, and you will see this notification down here at the bottom. If you have a dredging contract, this is what you're going to see for each of the tiles. You'll be able to add this information prior to the survey and then the information for after the survey. And you can add coordinates to it as you need to, depending on what your district's policy is. And again, this really should be set up by the contractor, but just so you know, this is what this information is. And the last thing that you have is the comments. And it's literally just comments. You can sit there, got a text box that you can type in comments for talking about the dredge surveys, before and after comments. All right, so if you are going to be manually adding an activity ID, again, I recommend the contractor is the one responsible for doing all of this, and using an SDF file is usually the better way of doing it, but hey, sometimes you do just have to do it manually. This is how you would end up going through and doing it. You can either, you're going to click on the add button, and then when you click on the add button, this is the view that you're going to get, and this is where you set the activity number. Now be careful and let your contractor know to be careful. This activity number, once they put this in here, this is the activity ID. It cannot be changed once this is entered. Once you enter it here and you click OK, that's it. That's what the activity ID is. That's where it's going to be. So just keep that in mind. Then you're back to the activity screen where you're going to edit it, and then it's also showing you the bottom of the edit view for the pay activity. As I said, you have the list of what the CLIN is, the sum of activities, and any variances that happen to be set up in this particular instance. All right, so here's the rest of the information for editing the activity. Again, you can edit the description. Here, let's zoom in so that's a little bit closer. You can edit the description, you can change that, but as you can see here, the activity number, the activity ID cannot be changed. You can link this activity to a subcontractor. It can be linked to a feature. The duration, the phase, and the area can be set up. A work category can be chosen, and if it's set up for dredging, you'll have this dredge waterway feature, which can be set up. Now, in order to select this waterway feature, you have to have that set up in the district library first. and then you'll be able to select this for this one right here. Now, if the contractor tries to set this up and it's a dredging contract and they don't have anything in their list because these blue boxes are lookup fields and nothing shows up, they are going to contact you and say, hey, I'm trying to set up the waterway feature, but I don't see anything. That needs to be added to the district library waterway, dredge waterways information module and added there, and then they can add it at this point here. Then they set up the activity amount, and then they link it to the CLIN to get that taken care of. And of course, this updates based off of what CLIN they choose. And then the information down here will show all of that as well. Now, as you can see for this one, the activity amount is this one is exactly the sum of the CLIN, so only one activity is going to be linked to this particular pay activity. All right, now delete. So we have given you the option of deleting pay activities. The contractor can do this, the government can do this, anybody can do this, but proceed with caution. We're going to talk about the various different types. So we have 3 different ways that you can delete. You can delete a single record, you can delete multiple records, or you can delete all of them. Ha ha ha. Delete all. I suggest you use this one with caution because once you delete it, and you aren't using an SDF file, it's gone. So you're going to have to re-put all that stuff back in manually. So it's not as big a deal if you're using an SDF file because you can easily just re-import all that stuff pretty quickly. However, if you're doing all of this manually, you're not really going to want to use delete all unless you really know that all of that stuff needs to be deleted. When you try to delete it, it's going to ask you, are you sure? And you can either say yes or no. And again, just a reminder, back is your save. All right, so for multiple deletes, when you want to do a multiple delete, you'll choose delete. You'll click on the enable multiple delete, and you're going to get these checkboxes over at the top or over at the side. And then you're going to select each of the ones that you want using these checkboxes over here. And you can either delete selected records, or you can choose it to select all, or you can unselect everything, or you can disable the multiple delete. So say you choose multiple delete and you decided, no, I don't want to do that. Just click on this disable multiple delete and it'll go back to the normal view over here. And here is deleting all records. It is going to warn you, are you sure you want to do this? So just proceed with caution. Only do this if you really, really, really know that that's what you want to do. And prevent yourself from doing some extra work. So there are a couple occasions where you do need to delete them all, but in this particular case, just proceed with caution. All right, contract changes is our next option. In the contract changes, this is what a BCD item looks like, just for your reference and some information for you to go ahead and read. I'm going to leave this up here for just a second so you can read that for a second, and then we'll go on to the next slide. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. And if that wasn't enough time for you to read, again, I advise you to go to our website and download the slides so that way you have those for your future reference. All right, once you go into the contract changes module, this is the information that you're going to see. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this so that it's this button. Sorry, I can't remember which button I'm trying to choose. All right. So when you enter into the change request module, this is step 1 for getting a modification to show up inside of RMS. You're going to see the list, the list of all of the contract change requests that you currently have for your contract. If you haven't set anything up, you won't have anything showing in here. And you'll be able to see the status 4, 5, and 6. These are the only statuses that you're really going to see. 4 is an indication that it is still in draft mode and is not ready to be used. 5 is an indication that it is ready to be attached to a modification. And 6 is an indication that it has already been attached to a modification. And then you'll have the reference numbers if it's been attached or not. You'll also see your change request numbers and the amounts, the days, how long, if it's got any days. So if it's like something for weather, the weather was bad and you needed a 10-day extension or a 150-day extension, whatever it happens to be, you'll see that extension showing up in here. Now, one thing to note down here at the bottom, by single clicking on the change request, you'll be able to see at a glance where it's sitting for that particular change request. And the number of green checkboxes that you have over here is dependent upon the change request itself, because not all change requests are going to require plans, specification, government estimates, or contractor proposal. If you want to know which ones of these are required for your change request, you'll need to check with your district's policy in order to figure that one out. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and zoom out. Cool. All right, so moving on. Oh, and of course we have the add, edit, and delete buttons right up here. Now, when you choose the add button for this particular case, this is the first thing that's going to pop up, and it's going to ask you what kind of change request are you going to do. You want a single change request, or do you want a multi-part for the first or a subsequent of a multi-part, or do you want to do it for a weather modification? Now, the nice thing about using the one for a weather modification is it's going to fill out a whole bunch of information for you automatically, and it's going to format some things nice and pretty for you by using this one. And if you're using the weather modification, this is the view that you're going to end up seeing. It's going to ask you what date is the bad weather from, and what is the change request number. Now, if you're using any of the other three, which is a single part or a multi-part, then what you're going to end up having is the change request number, and it's going to ask for the agency code and the mod, I think it's the mod, or the reason code. So those two things you will have to get set up. Now, the change request number can only be edited here. You're not going to be able to edit past this screen. So make sure you get the right number in here. Otherwise, you won't be able to edit it. And when you are done, so you click on next, you get this screen, and then you click on finish. It will take you to the change request edit view. Ta-da! This one. And as you see up at the top, we have a couple of tabs that are going, and your default tab is the Inception tab. So this is where you start off with to get everything done. And see, as you can see, the change request number can't be changed. And the change request title is already set if it's a weather modification. If it's not, you'll go ahead and add the change request title up here in order for you to see the name in the list that was on the previous screen 2 slides ago. You will need to set at minimum the inception date. Once that is set, then you can go on to the other ones, but if you have a mod required date, you should probably also put that one in there. The reason codes are going to be set already if it's a weather modification. For any other ones, you would have set that on the previous screen where it's where you entered the change request number itself. If you are using this change request for something, don't enter in a date for date canceled, because if you put in a date for date canceled, you won't be able to link this to a modification at a later date and time. So just keep that in mind. Don't put a date in here unless it really is canceled. These blue boxes here are lookup fields, so you're going to click on it. Remember this agency code. That list of agency codes can be found in the system library. Same thing with the reason codes and the mod type codes. So that's where this information pulls from. On the description tab. So if what you are doing is a weather modification, you'll already have a BCD item created for you with the information showing up in this section already done, because that's what weather modifications do. If it's not a weather modification, then you will go ahead and have to either add, or if it's a quantity change, there's a little button down here that you'll check on to tell it to do a quantity variation, and it will automatically add your BCD item here. When you go into the BCD edit item, that happens when you click on either add or quantity. You'll come into this edit view right here where you can change the item number, the title, the specs, paragraph number, drawing number, and then the initial estimate. If there's a change in time, that can be entered in right here. Now, if this is a quantity variation, there's going to be another button that's right down here, which will allow you to update the quantities for all of your quantity cleanse. It's going to specifically tell you which cleanse you can choose it from, and those are the only cleanse that you can choose it from. So if you click on quantity change and you don't have any quantity cleanse in RMS, it's not going to show anything. So just be aware of that. It's only when you have a quantity change, it's only going to show you the cleanse that have quantities. That's it. And with this one, if it's not a quantity cleanse, you'll be able to put your initial estimates and then do the rest of the funding on the status funding tab. Again, you can fill out all of this information down here as your district requires, and see this lovely little formatting down here. This is for the weather modification. We do that formatting, which is difficult to do otherwise. These little boxes right here will allow you to make it bigger to be able to write this information in. So if you click on this box, it'll make a bigger screen for you to start typing in information if you would like to use that. Then on the status funding tab, this is where you're going to start setting up stuff, and what you're going to take a look at is there's a bunch of check boxes over here on the side. If you have any of these checks, the appropriate date fields will show up here, so that way you can add the correct dates as needed. What you check here is going to be dependent upon your district or office's policy, or in this case, or in some cases, just the change request itself, what it needs to be set up. This part down here is very, very important. So when doing a modification, to ensure that you don't have any problems with the progress payments down later in the contract, you need to make sure that you are choosing the correct funding account for this change request, or more than one funding account for this change request. So what you will need to do before entering anything in here is you need to have some kind of piece, I would recommend having some kind of piece of paper that has the list of all of your funding accounts with their linked PRNCs and their linked obligation line items, so you know where to put it on. So let's say you're trying to put something on obligation 3 and obligation 10, and that happens to be on funding account 1320 and on another funding account, let's just say it was 1510. So what you will need to do is you'll need to know where those obligation line items, which funding accounts those are associated with, so you can put the money, the dollar amounts on the right place in this location. Because if you don't, later on in the road, you will see some, you won't be able to find the obligation line item that you're looking for when you try to finish up the modification. And I'll talk about that more when we get to that screen. But this is the first place where users accidentally put it in the wrong place, and it's because they don't have an understanding of what funding accounts are associated with which obligation line items. Once you've entered this information, you filled out all of the dates required for here, then you come down here to the change request status, funding status, and you changed it from proposed to approved. At that point, it is now ready to be able to link to a modification. If you have any supporting documents, you can add those ones here. And if you have any claims and disputes, they will show up in this tab right here. To add it to the change request, though, you'll actually have to go to the claims and disputes module and click open up the claim dispute that happens to need to go onto this. Check the box at the bottom, and then you'll be able to add that to this particular change request. Now, once all of that is done, you can then move on to the contract modifications module, which is to the right of the contract changes. All right, for contract modifications, like the change request, the first thing that you're going to pull up is a list of all modifications that have been added. And if you single click on any of those modifications, you'll be able to see a brief description show up down here. Now, with these modifications, you will see what the reference number is, the mod number, the title, the mod signature date, the amount, as well as if it's been completed in RMS or not. Now, note this mod number is going to be coming from PD squared. So if you don't have a mod number in here at the time, that's because it has not been entered in the SF30-2 tab, which we'll talk about in just a bit. All right, so when you open up a modification by double clicking on it or clicking the add button, the first thing that's going to show up is the SF30-1 tab. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this so we can look at this a little bit better. Now, nothing will be in any of these ones when you first add a modification. If you need to, once it's the first one, you're going to click on this add button over here to choose the change request. It's going to bring up a list of all of the change requests that are available and have not already been linked to a modification. Now, there's going to be a checkbox off to the right that is going to be checked, and you can then select that change request, click OK, and it will add it to here. If it is a quantity change, then once you put in the change request, all of this information for the funding accounts and the CLINs are going to show up automatically. You won't have to worry about trying to add the CLINs or the funding information, because it's going to do that automatically for you. But if you have a modification that is not a quantity change, once you've added the change request up here, you can then come down here and add the change, the CLINs that are going to be associated with it. Now, when you click on this add button, you have a couple of options. You can either revise an existing CLIN, create a new CLIN. I think there's one more. Yeah, add CLIN equal to modification, manually add a new CLIN, or revise an existing CLIN. So those are the options that you'll get when you click on here. And as you can see, you can have more than one CLIN showing up in the same modification. Once you've added the CLIN, the funding accounts will then show up. And this is going to be, so this funding account information is being pulled from what you set up in the status funding tab of the change request. So if you don't see the right PRNC showing up in here, then you need to go back to the change request and go to the status funding tab and move the money around to make sure you put it on the right one, so that way the correct PRNC amount is showing up down here in this funding section. Excuse me. Okay, let's zoom out here. Zoom. Thank you. The next thing you can go to is the SF30-2 tab. Now, if you are ready to send all of the, if you want to send all of the documents and complete the mod package, I highly, highly, highly recommend well, actually, no, you have to. If you want the completed SF30 document, you have to do SF30-1, -2, and -3 tabs. You must complete them fully before completing the mod package, because if you don't have everything fully completed in these 3 tabs, your SF30 is not going to have the full amount of information that it's supposed to have. And when you try to go and complete this, RMS is going to say, you don't have something, so I'm not going to send it to PCF. And once you've completed it and it's done, right now you have no way of resending that. So before doing anything with the mod package, you must complete SF30-1, 2, and 3 tabs before going on to doing the mod package tab. But back to the SF30-2 tab, you have the modification number, which again, this is what comes from PD squared. Then you have the requisition number, which is going to be on block 4 for the SF30, and then block 12 for the SF30 is this information that's showing up right here. Now, one thing to note about here, down here on this block 13E, if you want to show on the SF30 that the contractor has to have a signature required for this document, you need to check this box. Because even though you may have set up a unilateral or a bilateral change inside of the change request, if you don't check or uncheck this box based off of what type you have, when you view the SF30, it's going to show what shows up in here. So if you have a unilateral and this box is checked and you open up the SF30, it's going to say contractor signature required. And you're like, wait a minute, this is a unilateral. It doesn't need a contractor signature. Why is that there? Oh, this is why. So you just come back over to the SF30-2 tab and you uncheck that box and poof, it's done. Now, if you need to add any of this information, so like you need to add FAR lookup, again, this comes from the system library, FAR codes, and that's where that stuff comes from. You can check these 2 boxes in order to use which ones of these. Check with your district policy to see which one you're going to use. All right, and this one's talking about all of that stuff that I really just talked about already. So you can go back and review this at your leisure at any point in time. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Well, actually, I'll let you read that for a second while I take a drink of water, and then we'll move on. Okay. SF30-3 tab. So for the SF30-3 tab, this is where you fill, where blocks 14, 15A, and 16A are filled in, showing up in these different sections. Now, you can exclude the timed or time text by using this box if you want to, or you can just go ahead and add all of this information in here as required by your district or office policy. And if the contractor signature, that information will go up in here. And then the government signature information will go down here. And then we have the Release Mod tab. The Release Mod tab is probably the second to last thing that you're pretty much going to be doing. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. When you were on the SF30-1 tab, let me go ahead and back up over there so we can talk about that. Okay. When you click on this add button and you add your change request, there's going to be a little pop-up that will show up that will ask add supporting documents. And if the supporting documents, if you want those supporting documents from the change request to be automatically added to this contract modification, click on yes. And then that will populate your supporting documents tab from the change request that you already added over there here. All right, let's go back to the Release Mod tab. Release. There we go. Now, in the Release Mod tab, there are going to be a couple of checkboxes. The first checkbox that's going to be up here up at the top is whether or not the PRNCs are required for this particular modification inside of CEFMS. If you check that, then you're not going to need to enter in any of the informations from CEFMS. Otherwise, leave it unchecked so that way everything is done from the CEFMS information. You will have the checkbox for contractor signature required. You can either check it or not, depending on whether or not this is a bilateral or unilateral. If it is checked, you will have to enter the dates for the sent to and due back and signed by contractor. And then once all of that stuff is done, then you can enter the government signature date to bring up the rest of the funding information. Now, let's see, we're going to talk about that on the other tab. Now, see, this information, it does tell you about who should be putting in that information. Check with your district's policy to verify who is supposed to be entering the government signature date. And of course, there's some more information over here that you can read as well. All right. So once you have all of that information entered as needed, then you will have all of the cleanse that you assigned from the SF30-1 tab showing up in here. And you'll need to set up the obligations from this section right here by double clicking on them. When you double click on them, so this is where I was telling you if you pick the wrong funding account or if you pick the wrong PRNC. So the wrong funding account was chosen on the contract change request. And the wrong PRNC was chosen on the SF30-1 tab. When you double click in here, it's going to show you a list of the obligations that are available with that funding account and PRNC number. If you don't see your obligation line item, don't force it. If you force it, you're going to cause more work for yourself with the progress payments going down the road. So even though there's a little radial button that will allow you to say, okay, show all of my obligation line items, don't force it. Use that button to find out what the funding account and PRNC number for that obligation is. Write it down. Go back to the change request. Make sure the funding account is correct. Then go back to the SF30-1 tab. Make sure the PRNC is correct. Then come back to this Release Mod tab and finish it up. Now, what will happen if you do that is you will have to take this government signature date off and then go back to the SF30 tab and be able to do the PRNC or click on the change request number and go to the status funding tab and update the funding account that way. Once those ones have been updated, come back to the Release Mod tab, re-enter that government signature date, double click on this one, and your obligation line item will show up then. But again, please do not force it because it's going to cause more work for you if you click on that radio button and say, oh, this is my obligation. Let me just put the money here. Next. Yeah, that's going to cause more work for you. So save yourself some work and just do a little bit of extra right here. Back up to the change request and fix the funding account and then the SF30-1 tab. So that way it'll make your life much, much better. All right. Balancing for modifications. So the financial balancing is basically going to be the contractor mostly is going to have to update their pay activities to agree with whatever changes, whether it's additional money or taking away money. They're going to have to update their pay activities. Now, I highly recommend that this information is done by the contractor, especially if they're using an STF file, because though as the government, you can go in there and you can add that information, excuse me, which you'll see on the next tab. you'll be able to edit that information for them. However, if they're using an SDF file and they neglect to enter that new activity ID that you've balanced for them so nicely, and then they go to do their SDF import, it's not going to match. You're going to have negative numbers on the progress payments, and they're going to be like, huh? Why do I have a negative number here? So it's best practice probably to have the contractor balance the modification, so that way, once you've enacted the modification, send a message to the contractor letting them know, hey, this modification, which affects this CLIN, has been enacted. You need to go and update your pay activities to reflect this change in the dollar amount. So that way they get that taken care of, and let them know they need to do that before their next progress payment, because if they don't, they're not going to be able to do their progress payment. They're going to get stuck. So this is where the Pay Activities tab comes in, where you can actually go through and look at that. It will give you the list of all of the CLINs that you have linked to this particular modification. By double-clicking on the CLIN, it's going to bring up a list of all of the pay activities associated with that CLIN at this point in time. And then by clicking on the activities themselves, you will see the pay activity edit view. So again, you can come in here and make these changes, but please, if the contract is using a SDF file to get the pay activities into RMS, don't do this for the contractor. Make them do it, because if they don't update their scheduling software and they do an import, they're going to get imbalances and things are not going to work the way they want, and it's just going to cause more work for them in the long run, and more work for you in the long run too, because you did all this work ahead of time and they didn't update it in their SDF file, and now you're like, man, I just did you a favor and you're like making more work for yourself. Don't make more work for yourself than you have to. All right. Next tab is the mod package tab. So now we have the single mod package. You have the option of uploading these documents to PCF outside of RMS. If that's the case, you can just click on this lovely little checkbox and walk away. You're done. You don't need to do anything else. Or if you are going to use RMS to do all of that stuff, the first thing you're going to do is click on this add button. It's going to bring you to a document package edit view right here, where you can sit there and add all of the documents that go along with this modification, including the SF30 document. And this document package is a special document package because there's a new a new column that talks about the PCF container. For those of you that have been here for a really long time, you'll remember that the mod package tab had a bunch of different sections listed the same as these ones right here, and you would have to go into each and every single one of them and add the documents to that document package, complete it, back it out, go to the next one, go in, add your document, complete it, back it out. That's a lot of work. So what we've done is we've made it easier for you. We've reduced it down to just one document package, but you will have to go through and specify, okay, here's my SF30, here's my BCD item, here's my contractor's offer, that kind of stuff. You'll just set all that stuff, and then once everything is done, any documents that need to be signed are signed, you can go through and complete this package. Now, if you have not entered the PD squared number in the SF30-2 tab, do not complete this document package. Wait until the PD squared number has been entered, then complete this document package after you upload that fully completed SF30 form. Because once you click on this delete and then go back to the previous, let's go back up here, go back to this previous screen and click this mod package complete send to PCF, if it doesn't have that PD squared number, it's going to sit there and say, yeah, no, I can't do that. I'm missing something. But you're not going to be able to resend it to RMS. Oh, the other thing, if you enter the wrong PD squared number, you're not going to be able to resend it to PCF inside of RMS. You're going to have to manually upload all of those documents into PCF if you accidentally put the wrong PD squared number in the SF30-2 tab. So make sure that that number is correct before finishing this little checkbox here. And once that's good, you'll click on this box and everything will be sent to PCF within 24 to 72 hours. Okay. Once your modification has been fully completed, you'll back out, single click on it, and your ideal is to have all of these checkboxes as green. You are good to go. And that pretty much takes care of the contract modifications. Oh, and the completed in RMS will change to yes. All right. Last one we're going to talk about in this section is the contractor claims and disputes. If for whatever reason you have a contractor claims and disputes, you can either go into that module itself and you'll see the list of all of the claims and disputes that are showing up in here, or you can go to the contract reports and see a list of all of the claims that are showing up by using this report right here, or specify which one it's going to be. So those are the two places that you can go through and take a look at those ones. Okay, so from the contractor claims and disputes, we're going on to the add. So you're going to click on the add button to add a new claim or dispute. The ID is not editable. You cannot change this one. You, however, can select your project manager. You can set the type, and then once that's done, you'll go ahead and click OK. And as you can see, there's some more information about some of that stuff over here. Now, the report itself is going to look something like this. This is basically what it will look like. This is also will be able to be gotten from the contractor reports as well. So you can either pull it up from inside the claim itself, or you can pull it up from this view right here. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. And if there are no questions, we're going to take a real quick 5-minute break. So that way, if you have any business that you need to take care of, you can go ahead and do that. So if after 30 seconds I don't hear anything from you guys, we're going to go ahead and just take a quick break, and then we'll continue on after that. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so we'll go ahead and take a really quick break, and we'll be back momentarily. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, and we'll go ahead and keep on checking. Next section is the Schedules tab. So in the Schedules tab, we have the activity schedule, the milestone schedule, the placement schedule, and the feature schedule. So here is a brief overview of the activity schedules, some information about the, if you're using an NAS or SDF file for your activity schedule, and an activity schedule can be entered manually or by an SDF import. Honestly, probably the one that will cause the least amount of work for everybody involved is using the SDF file. It's just easier for both the contractor and the government to get everything done in SDF file and then import it into RMS. So that way you can approve the schedule as at one time and then import it, versus if they manually input everything in there, then they can go in and they can make changes whenever they want. Here, change here, change there, and then you're constantly having to go in. Okay, what changed? Is that good? Am I okay with that? I don't know. Whereas on the and you won't necessarily know if your contractor doesn't tell you that they've made a change. So it's probably better for everybody involved if you use an SDF import in order to get your activity schedule. That's my personal opinion. Check with your district's policy as well as the contract itself to see whether or not there was anything that specified how that was taken care of. And again, there's more information on here. Go ahead and read that at your leisure. Again, it's on our website at rms.usace.army.mil, and download the slides there. All right, first thing we're going to talk about is the activity schedule. What you see right here is the activity schedule for a contract that is set up to be manually entered with activities. So the only thing that you're going to be able to see is, or edit, is the scheduled start and finish date. That's it. You're not going to have any other like early or late start or finished information. You're not going to have, excuse me, you're not going to have any of the stuff that is required for, I can't remember what kind of type it is. There are specific contracts under FAR reference codes that require you to have what comes in a activity schedule that we see in the SDEF import type. And I think we have that. Yeah, we'll show that on the next screen. So for both of them, there's going to be sort tiles that are going to be across the top. Oh, no, we're not showing that in this one. I apologize. So with the SDEF import, this is going to be a little bit different. You're not going to be able to make any changes in here. And then you will have the early and late start finish dates that will show up, as well as a float that will show up. And then, of course, the actual start and finish dates. Now, depending on which way yours is set up will depend on which view you get when you come into the activity schedules itself. We did do a training very specific on schedules themselves. I believe it is linked at the end of this particular training, so that way if you want to be able to view more in depth on all of the activity schedules, you can go ahead and click on that YouTube training and review that at your leisure, skip around to different sections if you would like to as well. All right, so when you go into the milestone schedule module, this is the information that you will see. Of course, you have the sort tiles going off at the top, the award duration. You won't be able to set the award duration until after you set the contract award. Once the contract has been awarded, then you can come in here and set the award duration. If you have any modifications that change the number of days, that information will show up in this one for current duration. You have the system milestones, contract milestones, local milestones, district milestones, and system milestones will all show up in here. Then we have our placement schedule. With the placement schedule, there are a couple of tabs off the top, but the one thing that I will let you know, and this will tell you what each of those particular what each of those tabs will actually do or are supposed to do. But please note that for the placement schedule, we're currently in the process of redoing all of this stuff based off of the HQ's specifications. So right now, if you are having any issues with this, or if you want to know how to do more in depth, how to work on this one, please submit a ticket to the RMS Support Center and we will help you out with that at that time. Then we have our features schedule. Now, when you open up the features schedule, if your contractor hasn't gone through and set up the features of work as well as the three-phase inspection, you're not going to see anything here. Nothing is going to be shown up in this particular section. So before anything shows up here, the contractor first must go through and set up both the three-phase inspection module as well as the features of work module. Once they've set that up, then you can come in here and take a look at your feature schedule. And if you want to schedule when the inspections are going to happen, the preparatory or the initial, you just double click on it. It'll open up the edit view and you'll be able to add information to that one. For more information on this stuff, please see our link to our schedule training that was held last month. Again, that's at the end of this particular training, and I'll show that to you here in just a little bit. But in the meantime, are there any questions about the milestone section? Oh. Sorry, it wasn't last month, it was in June. So the schedules presentation was in June, not July. I apologize. I can't remember my month from my month. Too many things going on. All right, so since I haven't heard any questions, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section, which is import and export. So we're going to briefly hit the import and export, but if you want more in-depth information about anything, if I don't cover it here, we do have I do believe we have another training that recovered a lot of this stuff, and the links for that will be at the end on the resources tab for this particular training. So moving on to what we see. These are all of the things that we've got for import export. And the first one we're going to talk about is the importing from P2. We left this module in here just for those people who are used to being able to go in and manually linking contracts for P2, just to let them know that, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. It's already automatically done. All you have to do is go to the import section, link it to the P2 project, and you're good to go. So you don't have to import the P2 project first, then link it to the contract. It's automatically done for, the import is automatically done for you. You just have to link it to the contract. Okay, then the next one is import submittals. Now, if you do not provide your contractor with a specs and TAC import, you have the ability to allow them to do it through the import submittals. Now, this is only going to import the submittal register. It's not going to import anything else. It's not going to have as much detail as what you can get in the using the specs and TAC import. But if you choose to have them just do the submittal register, then what they'll need to do is download this template and use the template to enter all of the submittal items that they need. Once they're done, they'll choose which register to import it into, and they'll choose whether or not they're going to overwrite or going to merge it. Now, caveat with overwrite. If you are using the overwrite existing submittals and you have anything in the transmittal log, beware. All that stuff is going to be gone. Bye-bye. It's out of there. So anytime it's using an overwrite, RMS will log the user, date, time, who actually overwrote the submittals, both here in import submittals and in the import specs and TAC. Overwrite for both of those are going to do the exact same thing. It's going to completely wipe out the transmittal log. Now, if the contract is just starting and there's only like one item in the transmittal log, that probably is okay, depending on how much work needs to be done in the other areas, and then they can just resubmit that one and no big deal. But if you're halfway through the contract and you've got 20, 30, 50, 100 or some odd submittals that have already been submitted, I've seen up in actually there was one that recently just happened. Someone accidentally overwrote the submittal register for the wrong contract and wiped out over 500 transmittal log items. That was not fun. We had 5 different people calling us, what happened? And it's like, well, let me check the system. So-and-so at this time did this. You can bet your butt that somebody was really pissed off about that. Thankfully, under these extenuating circumstances, we could help out and get that stuff back in there. But please be aware that if you accidentally use this overwrite and it's not caught within the first 5 days, you're stuck. You're going to have to redo every single one of those submittals. Now, all of the documents will still be in the contract file module, but in your submittal register, everything is going to show as outstanding and nothing is going to be taken care of or completed or done. So you're really going to have to resubmit every single one of the documents that were already done. So if for whatever reason this happens, do not wait. Contact us immediately so that way we can get on it, because we have a very limited time frame for which we can restore these little oopsies, because RMS does not have an undo button. So sad. No undo button. So make sure you let people know, and you stress, do not use this unless it is absolutely, positively necessary, because otherwise it'll make a lot of work for everybody. And if we have to restore, it can take up to a week or more for that restore to actually go through, because we have a 5-day window. We can download that stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff that we have to do on the back end to get it back on there. So please be aware that if this happens, your contract is going to be stopped for the time that it takes for that information to be put back in. So just be aware of that. Okay. Importing from another contract. If you have some data that you know is going to come exactly from another contract, so like the submittal register or something that is exactly the same as another contract, and this contract is brand new, you can import that information from another contract by using this module right here. And you can use the check all or uncheck all, depending on what it is that you're wanting to import. But please note that if you use this, anything that's already in RMS in that section is going to be overwritten with, overwritten with the information from the contract that you've chosen. So to choose a contract, you click on this button. It's going to bring up a list of all of the contracts in your district. You're going to pick the one that you want, and then you're going to check the boxes that you want here, and then click on Copy Selected Data. And once it's done, that data will be imported into your contract. Now, please note, this does not go district to district. This is only in your district. So one district, you can copy within that district. But if you're in another district and you're like, oh, my other district has a contract that has everything that I want. You want to copy it? I'm sorry, that we cannot do that. Okay. Export mod lists. So if for whatever reason you want to get all of the modifications, this tells you all of the information that it's going to export. You can export it to a file, or you can export it to a clipboard, however you want to do it. If you're doing it to a clipboard, that's so you can paste it into another program that is not Excel, or I think it's PDF. Yeah, export to file, it does it for Excel and PDF. Might do it for Word, but I can't remember. But if you want to do it for something that's not available in this export to file, just use the export to clipboard, open up the program that you want to put it in, and then paste it and call it good. Okay, the specs and tech file. So this is actually probably the better way to get this information for the submittal register, as well as the specification sections into RMS. What will happen is usually the government will provide the specs and tech exported TXT file to the contractor, and then the contractor will import it into the contract using this module right here. They'll do that by clicking on the add button and then follow the instructions, and then this is the information that will show up. If you do multiple specs and tech files, then they'll show up in here. Now, again, with the specs and tag file, you have the option of doing a merge or an overwrite, but the overwrite has the same warnings as an overwrite of the submittal register. So more than likely, your best option is going to be to do it for a merge and save yourself a whole lot of work. And it's better that way, because then you can go through and you can delete the duplicates as you need it. All right. Then next is the contract closeouts. So when you go to the closeout section, these are the modules that you are going to be having access to. And we do have a training on this, which will go into more in depth than what I'm going to do. Again, that link is on the resources, well, one of the many resources slides that we have in this presentation. So if you want to view any of those ones, again, go to our website, download this slide deck, and then go to the resources tab. There's a link for all of the videos that you would like to, that we think would be useful for you. All right, these are what we're going to be going over. And here is the list a little bit more in depth of what the closeout activities actually are. And then this is for the real property item. Now, you'll see that the colors up here are gold. That is because this is from the contractor's view. That is because the contractor now has the ability to enter real property information into RMS, but they can't do all of it. So this is so that way you know this is what they can do. This is all of the information that they can enter into the real property. And then when you go in government mode, this is what you see. So you'll have the same things that they have, and you can edit them as well, but you'll have more information, all of this stuff down here and a bunch of extra stuff over here that they did not have, because you don't really want them to see your funding information. That's not for them to know. That's for you to know and update, not for them to know and update. So, but they do have the ability to update the top part and some of this section right here. All right. Let's see here. Here's a little bit more information about some of that stuff. And then once you've filled out all of the appropriate information that shows up in here, you're going to make sure you click on the accepted. If you need to include the DDC, which is designed during construction costs, then you'll check this box right here. If you forget to check it here, that's okay, because there's another section down the way which you'll be able to set that up as well. All right, The next thing we're talking about is the Transfers DD1354 form. Let's zoom in on that so it makes it a little easier to take a look at this information. There we go. Okay, so there are 3 tabs that are in this section. That is the header real property, the deficiencies, and the remarks. Now, this one, you'll have to fill out this information up at the top as well as the information down at the bottom. But what I would like to point out is the real property ID. So once the real property has been added into RMS and you want to add it to the DD1354, you can come in here and use the add button and add as many as you need at this point right here. Note that we've added a new feature a couple months ago, which is allowing you to rearrange the order in which these show up in the actual DD1354. So if you accidentally add these in the wrong order, you don't have to delete them anymore. All you have to do is click and hold on it and then drag it up to the top and let go, and that will reorder them in the order that you want them to show up in the actual DD1354. So that's something that we've made a little bit easier for you guys in working with that one. And then again, once everything is filled out, you can click on this lovely little button up here for the 1354, or at any point in time when you're going through and filling this out, if you want to see what it looks like, you can click on this form to show a preview of what that looks like at that point. Next, we go on to the deficiencies tab. Now in the deficiencies tab, if there are any deficiencies that are associated with this particular transfer, you'll click on the add button. It's going to bring up a lookup list of all of the deficiencies that were added either in the QC or the QA daily reports. And you'll pick the ones that you need to add on here. The descriptions for them, when you select them, will show up here. And if you have any notes that need to be added or additional construction deficiencies that are not showing up in here, then you can just add it in this comment right here. And the last tab is the Remarks tab, and this is where I said if you forgot to click on that Include DDC for the real property, this is where you can actually click on it, and this will pop it to all of the real property items that are for this particular DD1354 form. But you'll enter the project description, you'll add the dollar amounts for the planning and design, the S&A costs, the DDC. This is where you entered the design during construction costs. So you'll put it in here, and if you check this box, it will add it to all of the real property items that had already been added on this section right here. You can add any remarks showing up down here, and then once you have finished all of these tabs, you're going to click on this form 1354, you're going to download it to computer, and then you'll click on this add button, upload it into the document package, sign it as required, and complete the document package to send it off to PCF. All right. Okay. So the other place where you can get those DD1354 forms is when you're in the contract menu, run over to the contract reports tab, and then go under the closeouts and look for the DD1354 form transfer and acceptance right here, and then you can look at them at that point. All right. The next module we're looking at is the Requisitions, DD1149. So here's some information about the differences. In this case, the only thing that I'm going to tell you is this is property that changes hands during construction, and that's when you use the 1149 document. All right, when you get in, well, hold on. When you get into the module, first thing you're going to see is a list of all of the DD1149s that have been entered into that contract. And then when you double click on one to edit it, or if you click on add to open one up, this is the view that you're going to get. So for the header information, you're going to go ahead and fill out all of the header information that is required. And then for the transfer property, you're going to add the transfer properties that need to be added here. When you click on the add button, that is going to open up a list of all of the transfer properties that were added to the QA/QC daily reports in for that particular issue. Once all of them have been added and the header was filled out, then you click on this report button over here, DD form 1149, to download it to your contract, to download it to your computer so that you can submit it wherever it needs to go. Now, There is no document package for this section. If you do want this to go to PCF from RMS, then you'll need to download it to your computer and upload it into RMS using the contract file module. So you go to the administration tab, open up contract file, choose add, and make sure you put it under the closeout sections and choose the appropriate type, and then load it up that way, and then you can send it to PCF that way, or you can just manually pop it into PCF if you have access to that. Oh, one little note that I'm going to point out for this is this data creates an audit trail of where each piece of transferred property was delivered. So that's what this information is for. That's why this is in here. But check with your district's policy what you're going to put in this one. All right. The next module of interest is the CPARs, or the Contractor Performance Assessment Report. Now, for more information on this one, I would definitely recommend that you check out the monthly training that we did on this one a while ago. Again, that link is in this particular slide deck all the way at the end on the resources, and I'll point that out in just a bit. But basically, in order to use all of this, what we're doing is we're allowing you to fill out the information for the CPARs report using RMS, and then once you've filled out all of these tabs, you'll be able to click on this Export CPARs and download the form to your computer. Now, at this point, RMS is not linked to CPARs, so there's no way to send this to CPARs from within RMS at this time. It may come back. We used to have it in the past, but there were reasons that it was discontinued. If it comes back, we'll add it back in there. If not, for now, you're going to have to manually send it over to the CPARs system outside of RMS. But at least you'll be able to fill out the information here and export the document already filled out in preparation to sending it off to CPARs. Warranty tracking. So here's some information about the warranty tracking, the various different bits of information, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. So, but if you want to go back and read that at your leisure, please download the slide decks and enjoy it. All right. So when you go into the warranty tracking, the first thing that's going to happen is this is the view that you are going to see. Now, the contractor has the ability to add the warranty items and the warranty inspections. What they don't have the ability to do is to add the facility items. Now, if they're going to add the warranty items and set up the warranty inspection, the government must first set up the facility items. So once you get that information set up, then you can let the contractor do the warranty items information over here. So that way you won't have to do that. But if they come back to you and they say, I can't add this because the facility is not there, that's because you need to come over here and add it. So you come over, you come over to the facility item, you click add if you don't already have one, and then you add the information that needs to be, and then you can go to the warranty items, and you or the contractor can do the warranty items, add the warranty items, and then go to the warranty inspection. So this is for the warranty, this is the warranty inspection view down here at the bottom. Here, let me zoom in on that so it makes it a little easier to see. There we go. All right. So this is the warranty inspections that will show up. So you have the ability to add the title, when the start and finish dates is, whether or not you're going to be doing a 4-month inspection or a 9-month inspection. Note here, they don't have to be exactly at 4 months or 9 months, because you can set that up with this date right here for when it is due. It could be a 6-month and a 12-month kind of thing. It's just, we provide you with 2 inspection periods. You can decide when those periods are based off of these due dates right here. Then when the inspection is done, you can click on, or the contractor can click on this one. Any documents that they need to add will be added to the document packages here. Any remarks are in here. And then, of course, you have your document package for the second inspection as well. Now, it could be your contract only needs 1 inspection, in which case you'll uncheck the first one and leave, or you'll uncheck the second one and leave the first one in there for the information. Now, what documents need to be added is dependent upon your district's policy. All right. Okay. So that is the end of that section. I'm going to open it up for any questions. If I don't hear anything, then we will go on to the next little bit and wrap it up from there. All right. So the last little bit is actually just our resources link. So I actually have, I think, 3 slides with resources. So the first slide at the end is going to be for general links. This is just for getting to the RMS website. If you need to submit a ticket to the help desk and you want to do it online, then you will use this option. Now remember, this does not work in Internet Explorer, so make sure when you are using this link that you open it up in Chrome, Firefox, or Edge. Any one of those ones will work, but Internet Explorer, if it hasn't already gone away, will go away soon. A next one, if you want to submit a JIRA ticket and you haven't been able to submit a ticket because you aren't able to log in for whatever reason, here's a tutorial on how to submit the ticket. It includes how to set up the account, how to change your password, and all of that stuff. A link to our YouTube channel is going to show up on here, so you can just click on that to go to our YouTube channel. We do upload all of the trainings to the YouTube channel under the webinars playlists, usually 5 business days after the training has been given. So here's the link for that. You can go ahead and look at that, or any of our other tutorial trainings will show up there as well. Our next slide with this, I've set this up so that way it's based off of the topics that we went over in the actual training. So for the local office, we have an additional training video that you can take a look at here. For district office, we have quite a few. For the district library, which we didn't really hit on with the district library, but if you have any questions about doing the district milestones, that's in here. For system library, these are the videos for that, the summary reports, the RMS staff, and then for the finances. And last, we have links to the schedules. So here is the schedules brown bag training that I was telling you about for more details on that. And then for closeouts, this one. Here is the closeout training right here, so that way you can do that. So basically all of the links that will help you with more in-depth information that we didn't go over will be on these resources slides right here. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for full questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or type your question in the Q&A. If we don't hear anything within 30 seconds, we will go ahead and pass this back to the PMO. But before we do that, are there any questions?
I have a really quick question about final pay estimates. Did you cover that earlier in the session? I had to step away for a little bit and was curious whether or not you had covered final pay estimates or not.
No, we did not cover anything about the final pay estimates, but if you have some specific questions, we might be able to help you out with that. Most of the pay activities and stuff was done with the beginning training yesterday, but I don't think they talked about the final pay. Do you have a specific question?
I do. So the Finance Center requires a fully signed ENG 93 to be emailed to them, and typically it goes through RMS. However, I have noticed that, and so we process the ENG 93 for signatures outside of RMS, and when we go to upload it, it doesn't seem to transfer from RMS to the Finance Center. Several months ago, there was a drag and drop portal where you could just drag it and it would send it. However, that went away, and we're not currently seeing a way to get that directly to the Finance Center through RMS.
So yeah, I'm aware of that issue right now. That's something that was recently changed that we're currently trying to work on. I do not believe you can do it manually. So I think at this time, give me 1 second. If you get to the point where you're unable to send that stuff, please submit a support ticket for us so that way we can take a look at that, because for the most part, most of those are able to go through, but like I said, sometimes there are issues. But yeah, for that one, go ahead and submit a support ticket and we'll see if we can't help you with that.
Okay, I should have a final pay estimate in about 2 or 3 weeks, so it may be a little bit before we get to that point, but thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Just whenever you're ready, go ahead and send that out. All right. Any other questions? Also, if there's anything that you want to see live demoed, we can also do that as well. Just let me know. All right. So I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A section, and I'm not hearing anything from anybody else. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this back over to our PMO to close it out. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining. This is Dallas Carlisle with the RMS PMO. Very helpful today. Remember, all those different YouTube videos will help you out a lot, and also feel free to send questions our way or to the help desk, and we can get those other answers for you. So thanks again. Hope you have a good day. Bye.